I was taught that on that rugged cross, Jesus took on the full brunt of sin, paying the infinite debt owed by our collective brokenness and perfectly satisfying every requirement of the ancient law. I remember the weight of those lessons, how they promised eternal salvation and a way to break free from the painful legacy of my past. The brutal, bewildering abuse I endured as a child at the hands of those who should have protected me, along with the scars of my own missteps. For many years, I accepted these teachings without hesitation, swallowing every word as truth. Yet as I grew older, I found myself lying awake at night, my heart drumming in my chest, compelled to ask ever more probing questions. I would sit by a creek near my home, the soft murmur of water undercutting my reflective silence, and question the familiar narratives I'd been taught. Narratives that had once provided solace, but now felt incomplete. These were not casual curiosities. They were deep, sometimes painful inquiries that challenged one of the core doctrines of my faith. In time, though, each question peeled back another layer of misconception, revealing a more authentic, liberating truth that not only deepened my faith, but also helped me reconstruct an identity shattered by trauma, from that of a helpless victim to one of a determined survivor. One restless evening, amid the dim glow of a single street lamp, a question haunted me. How could Jesus have been the pristine sin sacrifice when Mosaic law was unmistakably clear that a proper sin offering had to take place in the temple, with its blood sanctifying the altar in a prescribed manner? I began to picture the solemn rituals in the temple, the meticulous preparation of each offering, and noticed that the blood on the cross never touched any altar as demanded. This glaring disconnect between the ancient law and Jesus' method of sacrifice led me to search more deeply into the rich symbolism of these age-old practices. My journey of inquiry soon turned to the captivating episode with Nicodemus, described vividly in John 3. I had always imagined Nicodemus as a learned, somewhat reserved scribe who simply failed to grasp the metaphorical language of Jesus. I recalled the puzzled tone in his voice, the way his eyes widened as he asked, "How can I be born again? How can someone re-enter the womb and be born a second time?" That very question, once dismissed as confusion, took on new color when I began to envision the cultural context of the time. The dusty streets of Jerusalem, the low murmur of discussions about conversion and ritual immersions in cool, flowing water, as symbols of rebirth for those embracing Judaism. In rethinking Nicodemus's encounter, I imagined Jesus not offering a promise of forgiveness, but instead invoking a powerful image familiar to every devout Jew of that era. I pictured Jesus drawing on the ancient memory of Moses, recalling how, in the arid wilderness, God instructed him to fashion a bronze serpent, a symbol that transformed a fearful Egyptian emblem into a beacon of healing for those bitten by venomous snakes. It was as if, through that reimagined symbol, God declared, "I am greater than any earthly power. I can turn fear into hope and power into healing." This reinterpretation charged the cross with a radically different meaning. No longer was it simply a means to atone for sins. It now stood as an embodiment of divine authority, a living reminder that Jesus was asserting his mastery over the timeless Torah. I envisioned Jesus leaning in close as he taught Nicodemus, his voice resonating with a quiet, unyielding command that reminded Nicodemus what it meant to be born again. The familiar ritual of water immersion, a symbolic return to the roots of Judaism, to spiritual purity and renewal, became a call for a complete transformation. For Nicodemus, a man steeped in Jewish tradition and scholarly rigor, the idea of being born again was as radical as urging a modern-day evangelist to start a new life from scratch. So Jesus wasn't urging Nicodemus to simply wash away past misdeeds. He was demanding an upheaval of the old self, a call to turn away from centuries of man-made tradition that had strayed from the Torah's core ethics and embrace a fresh, revitalizing faith. This powerful transformation was later underscored when Nicodemus witnessed Jesus being lifted up on the cross, a vivid public declaration of supreme authority over ancient rituals that had governed the lives of millions. The cross radiated as a dynamic emblem of power, identity, and renewal, a rallying cry for all those who had suffered to reclaim their inner strength and find solace in a higher, transcendent authority. And yet, the question still reverberates. Why have we been led to believe that the cross represents a mere atonement, when beneath its rugged surface, its true meaning pulses with the life-affirming power of renewal, How did this widespread misconception take hold? And what cultural and theological currents turned the cross into an icon of reconciliation and repentance when its original message was so much more? The answer reveals itself through the murky corridors of church history. As the Catholic Church expanded its reach, influential bishops, steeped in the rationalism of Greek philosophy, started interlacing the teachings of Plato and Socrates with biblical texts. I picture them poring over scrolls in shadowed libraries, their discussions echoing through stone hallways, as they began to systematically strip away the distinctly Jewish elements of the tradition. In doing so, they recast the raw, potent symbol of the cross into one of atonement, all while wielding the threat of eternal damnation as a tool to enforce this new narrative. Their actions, deliberate and far-reaching, provided the Church with a unifying foundation, a claim to have birthed a new faith rather than to have reinterpreted an ancient Jewish tradition. With a heart both heavy and hopeful, I continued to confess Jesus as my Lord. Yet with my newfound understanding of the cross, this confession evolved into something deeper than a ritual utterance. It became a pledge of total submission. If Jesus truly reigns as my Lord, then every fiber of my being must align with His instruction, and there is no room for deviation from the path He illuminated. Every serious Christian theologian agrees on one fundamental point. Jesus meticulously upheld the law of Moses and instructed His followers to live by the Torah. Facing this truth, I realized that my own life had no choice but to mirror that commitment. In choosing to adhere to the Torah, as taught by Jesus Himself, I stepped into the shadow of the cross, not as a means of atonement, but as a source of lived authority, a healing authority that mended the wounds of my past and restored my dwindling strength.